disenfranchises voters. District 33 is yet another case. Today, it connects Latino communities in Dallas and Fort Worth, ensuring their voices are heard. But under this new map, it is configured to Dallas County alone. That deliberate change strips representation not only from my constituents in House District 115, but also from the people of Tarrant County. The result? Over 1 million Latinos in North Texas are left without meaningful congressional representation. Their voices are silenced. This is targeted exclusion, plain and simple, driven not by the needs of Texans, but by out-of-state political interests. It is a sad day for this chamber and for Texas when we put the whims of DC bosses above the needs of Texans who are truly suffering right now, like our families in the Hill Country, still grieving their losses and struggling to rebuild their lives, and promised by our own leadership to be put first as HB1. I was so moved by history growing up, learning about the Underground Railroad, Nazi Germany, and so many other painfully immoral times our world has experienced. Asking myself if I would have just stood by, too scared to say anything, or if I would have met the moment in recognizing that our lives, each and every one of us, 150 members, our lives, our impact can turn the tide, stop the hurt, and heal others, as well as ourselves at the same time. Today, I traded my state pin for my grandmother's pin in a reminder of how I was raised. I am sure how so many of you were as well, to recognize our obligation to speak and fight for those who are most vulnerable, to speak up against injustice, and to have courage whenever everyone around you seems to be too scared to do what is right. Members, I implore you, my colleagues, I implore you to have courage. What we are doing today is unjust, it is un-Texan, and it is un-American. All eyes are on Texas. All eyes are on our chamber. For all of these reasons, I urge you to vote nay on House Bill 4. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Yeah. Chair recognizes Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, choices are at the heart of what we do. We choose what bills that we file, choose how we vote on legislation, choose what committees we want to be on. Today is a choice. We do not have to be doing this. And this is a critical moment in our history, just like my colleague just said. Recently, I went to a classroom in my district, and as an educator, going to a classroom is one of the most joyful experiences that I do as a legislator. And while I was having uplifting conversations, a part of my heart broke, because through the dialogue, I realized just how many young people are disenchanted with politics and elected officials, have very real concerns about the future of democracy, our state, and our country, are worried about the needs of their families and friends. This is what we should be focused on: their needs, their future, the leadership that they are pleading for. What they need to see is leadership that, like Representative Barbara Gervin-Hawkins said, was brave and demonstrated the utmost political courage, or leadership that has intentional and reflective choices, leadership that is based in love, that creates policies that is compassionate and caring so that people can thrive, leadership that is future building. Today, we are seeing none of that. Let me be very clear. We could be the leaders the next generation needs, but instead we are doing harmful legislation that is completely opposite of the needs of the next generation. We could be a body that comes together and demonstrates political courage, intentional choices, love, future building, by saying that we will not let our maps be rigged. by saying that the maps are the blueprint for democratic engagement and they should not be corrupted. We could be that body. There are choices being made that are not leading towards that energy. Members, I know that it's been a long day, but this is for our future, for our children. I urge you to vote no.
Chair recognizes Dr. Lalani.
Mr. Speaker, members, I stand here today not just as a legislator, but as a physician and as an immigrant who came to this country more than 30 years ago. Believing in the American dream, I built life in Sugar Land, caring for seniors and families. I ran for the office for the same reason I practiced medicine, to diagnose what is wrong and act so the people can heal and thrive. I will not make this about the parties and personalities. I will talk about people. In this country, the people should choose their leaders, not the leaders should choose the people. I represent House District 76, one of the most diverse, vibrant, fast-growing areas in Texas, a living snapshot of America's future. Colleagues, the map before us, its consequences will far most upon the communities of color whose growth has powered the state, yet who often see their collective voices diluted by the lines drawn far from their block. Those choices are not accidental. Members, if the authors believe these maps improve representation for the communities of color, say so plainly. Put the racial impact on record. Tell the Texans the neighborhood splits and why. If you are proud of this impact, defend it here on the floor. Our constituents deserve no less. As a doctor, I would never ignore patients' warning signs. The warning signs are all over this map. It will determine who gets the clinic, who gets the flood control, the school investment, safe streets, and who will be told again to wait in the line. Briefly to the moment where we are in, the families across Texas are still rebuilding from disaster. They are asking why this is the first priority, why these maps are being fast-tracked, while their recovery and safety are pushed to the back. You know this is not right. The people you serve also know that. On the process, the map shaped behind closed doors, influenced by interest far from the communities on those pages, will not earn public trust. Trust is built upon open, with facts, and with the willingness to hear those who are affected the most, especially the community of color, who have carried so much of Texas growth and deserve a seat on the table, not the line through their neighborhood. Members, this vote will not close the book. The story of Texas is bigger than this map. In this story that brought me here, the American dream, and that every child, every senior, and every working family has a voice and have the choice who would represent them. We honor that promise when our district reflects the communities as they actually live, pray, learn, and work together. I ask you all to vote no on HB 4 to keep the faith with the people who have sent us here. Remember, Texans of every color and creed deserve a fair representation. I respectfully ask to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Vote no!
Chair recognizes Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cracking and packing. Cracking and packing. It's the classic Texas Republican two-step when it comes to discriminating against Black, Hispanic, and other minority Texans. You crack and pack minority neighborhoods to dilute their voices and give outsized influence to Anglo communities. Even though you know full well that Texans of color accounted for 95% of our state's population growth in the last decade. Your cracking and packing two-step is evident in many parts of the state in this map. I'm going to focus now just on my home county of Tarrant County. Tarrant County is a majority minority county of more than 2 million people. Tarrant County saw extensive growth in the last decade. All, I repeat, all because of people of color. In fact, Tarrant County's white population decreased in the last decade. But you wouldn't know that in looking at this discriminatory map. As you've already heard, this map fails to create a new Latino opportunity district in the Dallas-Fort Worth region, which is a tremendous failure because there should be one. But not only do we have that failure, this map cracks heavily black and Hispanic neighborhoods in Fort Worth out of Congressional District 33, the district they have been united in since 2012. So let me talk about how you've accomplished the cracking. Some of those neighborhoods are submerged into CD 25, which sprawls out more than 100 miles nearly to Abilene. Rural Anglo voters will now control the outcome of their congressional election, canceling their voices. The rest of those CD 33 precincts are splintered and used for parts in CD 12, once again controlled by Anglo voters in West Fort Worth and Parker counties. By the way, let me remind the House, if you've forgotten, how CD 33 came to be. In 2011, the legislature, in passing its congressional map that year, did the exact same thing that this map does. They took heavily minority neighborhoods in Tarrant County and submerged them into white-controlled districts, suburban and rural districts, until a federal court stepped in and called it what it was: intentional racial discrimination that is against the law. Now, if you've heard this before, and if you're on the House Redistricting Committee like I am, it's because Congressman Vesey explained this to you a couple of weeks ago in our hearing, but you ignored it. Now, this legislature is poised to defy that court ruling from 2011 and repeat the same discriminatory sin. So that's the cracking, or an example of it. Let's talk about the packing. So most of my majority-minority House District 101 will be packed into CD 30, a historic Dallas-based district where black voters have elected the candidate of their choice since that district's creation in 1991. In other words, you don't need to pack more minority voters into that district unless, of course, your goal is to cynically dilute their collective voting strength. But the intentional discrimination doesn't even stop there. As Congresswoman Crockett testified in the House committee hearing a few weeks ago, you've removed key economic engines from CD 30, like Love Field in downtown Dallas. Hell, you even took her home out of her district. She told you that, but you ignored her on that too, just like you ignored the thousands of Texans who voiced their strong opposition to this corrupt process. But you say, and I heard this in the committee, surely Congressional District 30 is going to have new economic engines with all that new territory in Tarrant County. Wrong. CD 30 in Tarrant County goes right up to the campus of UT Arlington, but the university goes into CD 6. CD 30 goes right up to the General Motors plant, but not quite. It also goes into CD 6. And the Arlington Entertainment District in CD 25. You know that's not a coincidence. You know what it is. It's straight up intentional discrimination. You can falsely claim it's about partisanship, but you know that's just a smokescreen for racial discrimination. We all see it. The people of Texas see it. And now the American people see it. Texas redistricting maps have been found to violate the Voting Rights Act every decade since the 1970s. I don't know why this legislature is so hell-bent on keeping that shameful streak going. But know this, we will see you back in court very soon.
Chair recognizes Mr. Bernal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is my 6th term, and when you've been here long enough, you get to know people. We often get to talk more personally, sometimes behind committee rooms or when it's late night during budget night, and those conversations are usually a little bit more personal. We talk in ways to each other that we don't talk here, and so I thought that the approach I would take, with so much has already been said that I agree with, that I would talk to you now the way I would talk to you then, with maybe a few fewer cuss words, of course. But I have to tell you, as your colleague, as your peer, it's frustrating when it seems like no matter what we say or what I say, you always seem to know better. That is frustrating. It is demeaning. And I'll give you an example of how often that's happened since I've been here. Some of you who have been here as long as I have may remember SB 4, which was the Show Me Your Papers bill, which allowed law enforcement to essentially racially profile people and say, you look like you don't belong, show me your papers, show me that you belong here. And we tried to tell you that that singled us out. We tried to tell you what that would look like on the ground, but you knew better. And then you've got the DEI bans that focus on clubs and departments that are designed to help and guarantee the success of students of color in particular. And we tried to tell you how that felt, what it meant, what you were doing, and even then, you seem to know better. And then we go to the library book bans, when so many of those books were written by authors of color. And we tried to tell you, look at who the authors are. Look what they're writing about. This is how it makes us feel. This is what you're doing. This is the effect. And even then, you seem to know better. Then we've got the 287G agreements, which turn local law enforcement into ICE agents. And look what's happening now. Our neighbors, our friends, our family are getting scooped off the street by masked, unidentified agents. And we tried to tell you, look what's going to happen. We are singled out. Look at how it makes us feel, and look at how it affects us. And even then, you seem to know better. And then, you didn't want Asian folks to own property. Very straightforward. And we said, you guys, look at what you're doing. Look at who you're pointing out. Look at how it makes people feel. And look at what's going to happen. And yet, even then, you seem to know better. When you tried successfully to have Confederate Heroes Day land around the same time as MLK Day, we tried to point out what it would do, how it would make people feel, what it would mean. We told you how it made us feel and who it singled out and who it would affect, and even then, you knew better. And so here we are with these maps. Tremendous population growth in Texas, especially in the black and brown communities. And the maps don't reflect that at all. And we're trying to tell you that there's something wrong there, that it's almost impossible to do that without focusing on race. And yet, you say that you know better. And now these maps are going through cities, counties, parts of town, and even neighborhoods, and drawing them away from one another, linking them up with people and places they have nothing to do with. And we are telling you, if you knew these places, if you know those people, You are singling them out. You're using race. Look at what you're doing. Look at how it makes them feel. And look at what the effect is. And even today, you're telling us that you know better. And I have to tell you, one of the distinguishing factors that someone is doing something to hurt you, that someone is doing something to keep you back and to hold you back in the most insidious and cynical way is when they say they know better. And that's what's happening today. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Anchio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise because I've heard from the proponents of this bill, from the authors of this bill, that this is somehow about fixing census numbers, somehow exclusively about partisanship. It's about fixing unconstitutional maps. But with every pretextual explanation, oftentimes contradictory explanations, I come back to a simple premise. And I'm going to speak as the former chair of the Mexican-American Legislative Caucus, the oldest and largest Latino legislative caucus in America, and just point out that the Latino community, by any metric, by any standard that you can apply to any map, is already underrepresented in the state of Texas today. It would be hard by any measure to quarrel with that. Very, very difficult. We represent over 40% of the population of the state, was responsible for 50% of all the growth in this state, and yet you have to try really, really hard in this map to set our community back because we're already underrepresented. You have to be intentional in the face of all the growth and all the numbers and all the data. You must be intentional. You have to try really, really hard to have us enjoy less representation than we already do under this map. If you apply the numbers, this map furnishes maybe 4 or 5 districts where the Latino community can elect candidates of their choice. Okay? If you apply math to that and a percentage, that 4 or 5 out of 38 comes out to about 10.5% to about 13%. Again, even though we represented 50% of all the growth in this state and are now the largest plurality population in the state of Texas. So to only say that Latinos are going to get between 10 and 13% of the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice under this current map explains to me that you had to try really, really hard. You had to be intentional about this lack of representation. And we can go through the individual places. In Tarrant County, it's been discussed, where nearly 1 in 3 people is Latino, and yet this map dismantles their only chance at representation. Gone. In Dallas County, where over 1 million Latinos, and side note, more Latinos in North Texas than even South Texas, where we have waited for more than a decade to have the opportunity to elect a Dallas County neighbor of our choice, This map denies us again. In Houston, Representatives Wale, Perez, and Hernandez talked about the longstanding Latino neighborhoods that are systematically and intentionally packed and cracked, tying working-class families to faraway suburbs that share nothing in common. In San Antonio, representatives have told you that a performing 60+% Latino congressional seat just disappears. It's gone. Poof. With no explanation. So this map is not democratic. It is not representative. Instead, let's just call it what it is. It is a deliberate, intentional, racial gerrymander. And the numbers don't lie. And colleagues, as has been pointed out to you over and over and over again, so much so that it must be seared into your brain, what is being attempted today is not new. What is being done to our communities today is not new, because every decade since the 1970s, this legislature, whether it was Dixiecrats or Democrats or Republicans, has discriminated against people of color. Every decade. And when we think about those people who came before us, we wonder, wow, what were they like? What were those people like who could look at the African American, Asian, Latino people on this House floor and say, you deserve less representation. I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you, you deserve less representation. And I'm going to be intentional about that. What were those people like? So just ask yourselves, and ask yourselves if you want to add your name to that list of people who looked at these communities of color, at their colleagues in the eye and said, no, you deserve less representation. Y para el pueblo que esté aquí o que está mirando en la televisión, voy a ofrecer unos comentarios en español para que todo el mundo sea incluido en este debate. Porque es claro y sabemos que la única manera que nuestra comunidad hispana va a llegar de donde estamos, bajo representados, a dónde queremos ir, es con representación. Es con representación. And if representation wasn't so important, if it wasn't so important, why are people willing to break the law and discriminate intentionally to take your representation from you? So, members, when Representative Bernal said that oftentimes this majority tells us, well, we know better than you, it is in fact the case here, where you are saying to people all over this state, no. See that congressperson that we gave you last time? That representation that you had last time? We know better today what you need. We know better today what people in Dallas or Houston or Austin or San Antonio need. We, the government, we, the politicians in Austin who have never been to your community, are going to tell you emphatically the representation you deserve today. And we're just gonna do it. And I thought about things, I've spoken a lot about the Latino community, but this is really about all Texans. I love living in a Texas that is diverse, that is growing, that is vibrant, and our representation needs to reflect that. This map does not reflect that, and you have to try hard. You have to be deliberate, and you have to be intentional in your efforts not to reflect to the diversity of this state. But members, it's not too late. You can vote no on this bill. You can say Texas is not going to go down this path. We are going to have a map that reflects the diversity of this state, the people of this state, the representation that people want in this state. Or you can add your names to that sullied list that has existed for decades and wonder about what those people were like. You need only look in the mirror. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for your continued patience throughout this most monumental debate. I rise today in opposition to this effort to conduct mid-decade redistricting as a proud Texan and as a proud native of South Texas in particular. South Texas in particular asked on multiple occasions to please bring live committee hearings and testimonies to the Valley so that the Valley could participate in this debate. Because as you know, to date, we are one of the most economically disenfranchised, disconnected parts of the state. So to everyone who did not get to attend, please know that we continue to fight on your behalf. And again, I stand here in line with those Texans who firmly believe across Texas and the nation that people should choose their representatives and not the other way around. And to everyone in here who states, and to everyone listening who's thinking, well, gerrymandering, this is just politics. This is pure politics. This doesn't really affect me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, politics affects everything. The air that we breathe, the water that we drink, the books that we read or do not allow others to read. It affects everything, and to say otherwise is purely privilege that we cannot take for granted. I stand here today to say if you are from South Texas, this is not about whether you are red or whether you are blue. This is about your voice and your representation. Our valley, South Texas, has unique needs to those comparable to anywhere else in the rest of the state. We're one of the only areas that has sea, land, and airports. So when you create districts in South Texas that sprawl over 200 miles, that stretch you out like string beans from the northern border of Mexico to the center of Texas, tell me, how is that fair and unique to your voice? Some of the districts that we've carved out in South Texas, for example, in CD 34, if anyone looks you in the face and says, this is good for South Texas, it is a lie. This proposed map removes over 294,000 Hispanic voices from South Texas and moves them to north of Nueces County. Again, almost 200 miles away from where you and your family live. That's a 38% reduction in Valley Hispanic voices. If anyone looks you in the face in South Texas and says that that is good for the Valley, it is a lie. And it was not made or drawn for you. The proposed map in CD 34 in South Texas reduces the number of registered voters with Hispanic surnames by nearly 15 percentage points. They are not going to look or sound like you. This plan would more than double the Anglo representation in South Texas. It would increase the Anglo voting population by 135%. They do not look, live, act, or speak like you. They do not know or understand your struggles. There is not a single restaurant, place, or even sporting event that you could go to in the Valley that is 135% Anglo. I've looked. No lo vas a encontrar. It's not there. I also rise today to address this growing myth that is being spread. And I guess the thought is, if we keep saying it enough, maybe it will become true. If we keep telling the whole world Hispanics are voting more and more red, the Valley is turning more and more red, if I say it enough, maybe it'll be true. Ladies and gentlemen, this map, this proposed map, is evidence that that is a lie. Not only is it not true, they are so afraid of how fiercely you are about to rise up, that we are building walls, carving lines, and destroying communities to make sure that you don't stand up and tell the nation that that is false. I cannot stand by idly and let them continue to perpetuate this lie. Son mentiras. I will never stop being proud of being from the Valley, and I will never stop fighting for our voice. And I'm telling you right now, please, if you respect or care for the Valley, vote no on this map. And when we continue to ask, why would you vote yes? And you say, because we can. I ask you to stop, pause, and think of all of the history, horrendous and otherwise, that we've been through because of the masquerade that Mike makes right. With this great power comes great responsibility, and we know that. It is our job to exercise restraint with our power. Please consider the power of restraint that you have right now for the people of Texas, and South Texas in particular. South Texas, they are drawing these lines because they are very, very afraid of Hispanic voices. And I think they should be.
Chair recognizes Ms. Johnson.
In 1972, Barbara Jordan ran for Congress. Texas, House District 18. When I looked around my house as a little girl, there was a painting of the storytellers. It was her favorite painting that my dad had. Black men speaking to youth about their history and about their future. As I look around the room of white men, I think about my dad. And I love the head shake. And I love the nod. Because this is about racism. And if you can't hear it from them, then hear it from me. As a white woman and a daughter of a man of privilege and power, he knew that his strength was to bring people that didn't look like him to the table of government. And so 50 years later, after Barbara Jordan, aided by white people to have a voice, the first woman of color elected to the South, a woman who sat in the impeachment of Nixon, a woman who said that finally, after amendment, debate, and vote, I am finally part of we the people. To stand here as a 50-year-old woman and know that we now go back in time. So let's talk about cowardice and cheats. Because if you knew you could win this next election, you wouldn't be taking this effort to try to steal 5 seats from elected officials that members of color elected to represent them in Washington, D.C. You wouldn't be doing everything you can to take this coalition of diversity and stand up at the mic and say, why are we doing this? Because we can. And you shield your racism with your party, with ignorance and arrogance, to come up here and say, to be honest with you, I haven't read the bill from the other side. To be honest with you, I haven't talked to the lawyers to be bringing this before it. Because you think that people will give you grace on ignorance and arrogance around party because you can't admit that the root of all of this is about racism and power. A power grab. A pure power grab. And so I'm going to ask, don't shake your head. Because I'm going to give you a moment to prove what you mean behind that. Because when Donald Trump called Georgia Republicans and said, hey, boys, I need you to steal me almost 12,000 votes to those men credit, they said, no, sir. We already know what Governor Abbott said. In a few minutes, we're going to find out what y'all say. Vote no on this bill.
Chair recognizes Mr. Martinez Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, a lot has been said, and I think it's important that we reflect on it, and I'll try not to repeat it. But there are some things that you really need to know, and I think you already know this. Redistricting is a very hands-on process. You think about your own legislative experience and the idea that somebody would hand you a bill, tell you to file it and pass it, and not read it, not lay it out, not change it, not amend it, not let it come back in conference and negotiate it. But yet, on this congressional map, that's exactly what's happening here. And you may be okay with that, but I know that when this leaves the legislative chamber and leaves the executive mansion, it goes to a federal court. And I've said it all the time that we are all equal in federal court. And they're going to want to know about these procedures and these deviations from procedure and all of the things that have been done through acts or omissions. And I hope you have the answers, because I don't understand how we can have a map that eliminates 2 minority opportunity districts in Bexar County, and we have 2 members from Bexar County on the redistricting committee, but we couldn't have a public hearing in Bexar County, which is a lot closer to get to than Harris or Dallas County. That's a flag. I've never seen a redistricting process where there was a lawyer appointed to represent only the views of the chairman and not the committee. I've been here long enough to see that happen before. That dog didn't hunt very well. Chair Darby will tell you about that. When he tried to represent that the lawyer for the redistricting committee only spoke to the chairman, both sides threw the lawyers out and almost the chairman. And we could not resume again until both sides had their own counsel so they could work through this process. That didn't happen here. I know there are court records and there are discovery items from past redistricting that really gets into people's thoughts, gets into their emails, gets into their personal emails, their text messages, those Gmail accounts. And I think what's happening here is because of those lessons, we have now removed this redistricting process from outside of this building, take it somewhere else, let this map be drawn, dropped into the committee, maybe a tweak or 2, perfecting amendments, and then brought to this floor where it's not going to be debated. And the first real question you ask, the answer is I don't know. All I know, my intent is to create 5 new seats. Political performance is legal. Yes, it is, but it's not legal on the backs of the minority community. And those are the answers we have tried to get. But you can't hide all your intentions with the words political performance. You cannot say that this map is race blind and only reflects political performance, but you have 444 precinct cuts, exactly that many, because there's a 370 report that will tell you that if you've been through voting rights and voting rights litigation, you can run a report that'll tell you that there are 444 precinct cuts. That is not an accident. That is not a drafting error. That is a mission. That is a laser focus on drawing maps and redesigning precincts in the process to get to your mathematical outcome. No answers here. We are told that the chairman told the lawyers to follow the law, but then he asked you to table amendments saying that we would honor Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. We will follow Jingles, which is U.S. Supreme Court case law. Told you we don't need those. We've told you, hey, if this outcome is very, very reminiscent of other things we've tried to do, courts will set this aside. Let's just revert to the current map. No, we're not going to do that either. I don't know how we can be so confident in our legislative work. Before we started the day, we were told that a court just set aside the 10 Commandment monument that was just passed in the regular session. So you tell me that the hearings are transparent, that our process was pure, but we are shielding from disclosure who's drawing the map, don't know the name of the lawyer, maybe know the name of the law firm, don't know where it's coming from. You don't have access to the lawyer. You don't even get a lawyer. Everybody who has taken this microphone and have given you their opinion as to what their lawyers have said, they are paying for them. But yet this committee and this chairman, with a lawyer that reports to him and him only, the taxpayers get to fund that legal representation. Everybody else has to go at it on their own. That's not fair. That's not transparent. So what I'm curious about is, if you won't tell us what you're doing, if you want to shield from disclosure the very things that you think are going to get you in trouble, you have to understand that sometimes your actions by themselves will be the evidence that we will use when we get to take this to another forum. I'll give you a real good example. Just this morning, we started this debate. We were told by Chair Hunter that CD 18 was created to create a 50% black CVAP district because the current one didn't have it. Well, newsflash, CD 18 didn't need to be a black CVAP district by 50% because it already behaved like one. It performed like one. There was no need to change it, but this is the very thing courts will look at when they want to know, well, if you're getting into racial discussions about the CVAP of this district, what were you thinking? What went into that? Because the performance analysis will show that it did not need to have a 50% CVAP, black CVAP, to perform and have African Americans elect candidates of their choice. We were told, and you heard it from the previous closing argument from Rep. Gomez, that South Texas and Texas is becoming more and more of a Republican-leaning state with Latino voters. Okay, I'll take you at your word for that, except your actions say otherwise. Because we know CD 29 was already a 60% HCVAP district, but that was knocked down to a 40% HCVAP district, and instead, CD 9 was created with a 50% HCVAP district. So the two statements don't pencil. If Republicans and political performance do so well with Latinos, why not run a Republican in CD 29 with a 60% HCVAP? I'll tell you why. And every election outcome for the last 20 years will tell you why. And so you cannot claim that you're creating Hispanic opportunity seats when you are taking true performing citizen voting age population districts and replacing them with nominal districts that may not perform, because under that standard, CD 9, CD 29, CD 35 should all have 60% Hispanic CVAPs. And so again, for the 5 redistrictings I've seen, there have been the entire Texas delegation of Congress in this building. And in fact, we had one member today who wanted to come here, and they said, well, we can't let him on the floor because he has a vested interest in the outcome. I remember the days, Ms. T, I know you do too, Joe, you do too, where you'd have this whole building surrounded by the Texas delegation, and you could not move an elementary school enrollment zone without having them come down like a sack of potatoes. I remember a time they would open this door so that we could watch the Senate gavel a map while we gavel theirs, because there is no trust in redistricting. We have not heard a peep from the Texas delegation about what they think about this and all the lines that have been impacted, except for those who've objected. And yet we're to accept the fact that this process, as controlled from the outside, is a legitimate process, is a transparent process, is a public process. I think not. And so you can cast your vote however you want. The only thing I will tell you in closing is, if you remember that committee, don't delete your emails. If you participated in those discussions, don't delete your text messages, because that's where we're going to go next. And like I said, you may win today, but we will have our opportunity in federal court. Whether you vote for this or not, you know it is wrong. There is a way to do this. And I don't think there's a single member in this body, all of you, both sides of the fence, we could lock this door like it's locked right now. We could fight all day. Nobody here is scared of that. Nobody here is scared of that. But to take this mic and to lay out this bill and tell the public that you're doing their work in a public and transparent and a fair process, and all you care about is just swaying political outcomes, that's not what this is. There is an easier way to do that. But you cannot and will not do that on the backs of the minority community. And that's why I object to this proposal, and that's why I ask and urge you to vote no.
Chair recognizes Mr. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say at the onset, Representative Hunter, that I have tremendous respect and admiration for you and for your years of service in this chamber. But I must also say with equal candor that I am deeply disappointed. I am disappointed in the willingness to mask the racial realities of this map underneath the guise of partisanship. Courts have been clear. Partisanship is not a license to engage in racial discrimination. It wasn't until today that I more fully appreciated what Dr. King wrote in 1963, sitting in a Birmingham jail, expressing his frustration with the moderates of his time. He said that shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. Representative Hunter, you have criticized my colleagues and I for breaking quorum to protest and to draw attention to these maps that deliberately sideline minorities from the political process. But as Dr. King reminded us, there are those who are more devoted to order than to justice, who prefer the absence of tension than to the presence of truth. I took time away not to avoid my duty, but to better understand the real implications of these maps on the people I serve in a district that is majority Hispanic, and on the more than 11 million Texans who look just like them. Their voices deserve to be heard and deserve to count the same as anyone else's. But let's focus on the congressional districts before us. It was mentioned that the underlying goal was simply to improve Republican performance, and Representative Hunter relied on the lawyers to draw the lines. But any fair reading of this map shows what it actually does. It systematically dilutes Latino and Black voting strength while cementing and increasing Anglo control. Any claim to the otherwise is either misunderstanding the racial realities of this map or is deliberately misrepresenting the truth, and neither approach is worthy of this chamber. We have not seen a map this deliberately engineered by skin color since the days that brought Americans to march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama in the 1960s. Marches to protest laws designed to sideline Black voters, marches that helped to bring about the Voting Rights Act just months later. Today, Hispanic and white Texans each make up about 40% of our state's population, equal in number. But under the proposed map, 26 of the 38 congressional districts, 70% of our entire state's congressional delegation will be controlled by white majority districts. You cannot say you found a way for one racial group that is 40% of our state's population to have 70% political control in this state and say that the racial disparities are merely coincidental. 45 years ago, Anglo-Texans made up 66% of our state's population. Today, that number is 40%. Yet your map freezes white political control as if the demographics in this state have not changed at all in the last 50 years. And somehow, in the 10 hours it takes to drive from my district in El Paso to yours, Representative Hunter, on the coast, across this vast and diverse state, your lawyers somehow managed to draw non-racial lines that will leave your party representing 90% of one race. And in case if your lawyers didn't advise you, it's not Hispanics or blacks. Why does your party want to represent 90% of white Texans, but not 90% of Texas Hispanics or blacks? Because this map has methodically carved and segregated those populations to ensure they cannot influence elections in those 26 white-controlled districts. Here is the cold, hard truth. Under this map, white Texans receive one member of Congress for every 445,000 residents. If you're Hispanic, it takes about 1.4 million residents for that same representation. If you are black, it takes 2 million. In this proposal, a Hispanic Texan has 1/3 the political value of a white Texan under this plan, and a black Texan 1/5. It would take 3 Hispanics to equal the representation of 1 white Texan and 5 black Texans to equal the value of 1 white Texan. Under these lines, Texas Hispanics will be the most underrepresented population group in all 50 states. The level of underrepresentation will far exceed what even conservative courts have struck down in Louisiana, Alabama, and just yesterday in Mississippi. And yet, when confronted with these facts, a common distraction from proponents of this map is to point a finger at California or Illinois and to say, everyone does it. But no Democratic map in California or Illinois systematically erases representation for a population that is 60% of this state. This map is an abomination. It is shameful. What kind of society are future generations of Texas Hispanic and black children going to grow up in where their government doesn't feel accountable to them? Where they've drawn the lines where they are only accountable to another group based solely on the color of their skin. All Americans, all Texans, whether Republican or Democrat, black, white, or Hispanic, should be appalled at what's happening here today. That our government is wanting a map where it would not be held accountable to the majority of the residents in its state, but to the ones that it hand selects, and in this case, by race. Mr. Speaker, I voted for you. Despite our vast political differences, I know you care about this institution and the way that we do business to serve the people of Texas with fairness. But, Mr. Speaker, we all took an oath to uphold the Constitution, not to flagrantly violate it or to test its limits. This is shameful what is happening here, Mr. Speaker, and with this map, I can no longer in good conscience continue to support you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members.
indivisible. That's the oath we swear every time we step onto this floor. But division is the only thing that this is about. I sat on redistricting and we talked a lot there about the communities that these maps divide. Through racial gerrymandering, these maps crack and pack districts of color, silence their voices and votes, and put politics over people in the most dramatic way possible. Texans were against these in committee almost 100 to 1. These maps are theft. But this is also about division that's both smaller and bigger. The smaller division is right here, right now, in this room. We used to say that Austin wasn't DC. We had strong disagreements, but all as servants of something bigger than ourselves, the people. But also the institution itself and the dream of democracy. Leadership in this chamber meant looking for common ground with respect. It seems like leadership today is just about the echo chamber. Who can be the loudest and the meanest? It's a toxic and selfish approach to government. Instead of being stewards of tomorrow's house, this process is tearing it apart today, brick by brick. But that's all part of a bigger division. People are more disconnected from government than ever before because they know it doesn't serve them. We've heard over and over again that Republicans didn't have to have hearings on this map, as if our people were being done some kind of a favor. But the people get what's going on. And they know that today, these maps are deepening the struggle for communities of color that will only worsen because one small man in DC demanded it. This is where division becomes dictatorship. The government against the people. Some people here are doing so much winning that they can't see what we're all losing. There's still time to turn back on this. We can actually unite with those people, and we can vote no, and we can move to the flooding legislation that I keep hearing is our #1 priority. Thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Dutton.
Mr. Speaker and members, my first instinct was to get up here and tell you all about the numbers. But I think you already know those. I think you know that during the last presidential election, the Democratic candidate got 45% of the vote about. But yet you all have, the other side has 65% of the seats. And now what you want to do is change that to 85% of the seats. Well, why are you doing that? And my thoughts is this. I think you're doing it because you know you're in decline. I think you know that you're not winning in terms of the public. And so rather than talk about all of the evilness of all this bill, I thought I'd tell you something I hope you'll remember. When you go home, you can pick up the Bible. I know some of you are probably Bible toters, so I'm talking to the Bible readers. Go to the book of Esther. Go to the book of Esther. When you want to talk about changing the rules, go to the book of Esther. You'll read about Haman. Haman wanted to change the rules. Haman was a Persian official that was close to the king, and he wanted to change the rules because Mordecai wouldn't bow to him, and Mordecai was a Jew. And so he wanted to change the rules to kill all the Jews. And so what he did is he changed the maps. No, he didn't. He built the gallows. He built the gallows for Mordecai.
And so I'll get you to the end of the story. You know who they put on the gallows first? Haman. And so when you look at this, members, I hope you'll recognize a couple of things. One is that, for you Bible readers again, I don't care what chapter you read. I don't care if you read all of it or read a little bit of it. One of the things that's always going to be prevalent is evil will never win. And so when you look at these maps and doing this to the black and brown community in Texas, that's evil. And I don't think you'll ever win. I think you'll win perhaps a battle, but the war, you will always remember that the war will be won by right and justice.
Chair recognizes Mr. Romero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. We're real proud in Fort Worth, and we pride ourselves in talking about we're the place where the West begins. And if you know a little history, manifest destiny and going across to the other side of the nation, that was the last place people would feel like they were in civilization before they went off into very dangerous places west of Fort Worth on their way to California. So I'm wondering what happened to our grit from our leaders, and I consider many of you leaders as well. What happened to our Texas tough? How bad do you need an advantage in order to win? You know, I'm a golfer, I'm a scratch golfer. That's why we have a handicap system. I don't want to play with somebody in the fifth flight. I want to play with somebody in the championship flight. We believe in high school football, and we have 6A all the way down to 1A or 2A. I can't imagine any of you would want to pit your 2A team against a 6A team. Or if you're a boxer, like I was in my youth, I was a middleweight. I'm not going to fight the lightweight. I already know the result. Even in bull riding, the champion wants the best bull, because even the bull is graded. Texas tough. You want competition. What's happening today isn't competition. So I love the fact that every day, including today, we get to start out our day with a prayer. And in today's prayer, the pastor said, and I quote, "Let's give thanks for America. Let's give thanks for an America where people are free, where people can live." And members, that was a message for all of us. Message that America should be a place where people are free to choose their representatives, not to vote in an election where they already know who their winner will be. So let's not be fooled in passing this bill. We are not free. People are not free to vote their interests. They aren't free to vote for people that have their same values because of the way you've split us apart. They aren't free to vote for somebody that has the same lived values, and it's proven by what you've done in the Latino and black communities. Under this bill, Texans aren't free to make a politician pay at the ballot as we say why we want electeds. Under this bill, Texans aren't free to reject a politician who can take away SNAP benefits from the hungry children and families. Texans aren't free to reject a politician who's taking away Medicaid and health care from what's already the most underinsured state in the nation. Texans aren't free to fire a politician for taking away federal dollars for sake of giving his billionaire friends tax breaks. And Texans aren't free to reject the idea that children and families should be locked up in private, for-profit prisons, all just because they're seeking a better life and putting it on the dime and the backs of the American taxpayer. Young men and women all over Texas, and even in my community in DFW, they aren't free to dream just as I did of one day being a U.S. congressperson. Because you've taken away that right through this map. You know, this bill, it determines the victor, and that's not freedom. That's forced subjugation, subordination, and that's oppression. This bill is a gross attempt to make Texans give up, to believe that their vote doesn't matter because the outcome is predetermined. That's not democracy. That's dangerous. And in fact, you too, you yourself, you're not even free to vote your conscience. You've been told exactly how to vote today. You've been harassed, threatened with the future loss of your seat, just as you were with the voucher scam. This is and should be the land of the free, not the land of where you must agree with me. You too have an oppressor. When Donald Trump asked for 5 more seats, your decision was made, and it was made at the expense of communities of color. Their political representation has been a target of this bill. And you're making that decision in your mind for political preservation. You made that decision, and you're making that decision out of fear. It's a political calculation. You are not free to be courageous and vote with your heart. One of the first times I ever came here, there was a mass, and the bishop gave a mass, and he said in Jewish times, men didn't make their decisions in their mind, they made them in their heart. Because then you could really tell what kind of heart a person had. And you may tell yourself that your heart is colorblind, but that's far from the reality of what these maps are. The intention of the map drawers, where is their heart? And for that matter, any member that votes for this map. If you truly believe in freedom and you believe in liberty, then you would believe in the principles of the American Revolution and the early Americans that fought because they understood and fought against taxation without representation. And you would vote no because that's exactly what this bill does. And by voting yes today, you're trying to take away that American belief in the democratic process, and you put us on a path to dictatorship. And you're no better, and we're no better than the monarchy that we left behind. You want people to give up, and we won't. So now's the time to be brave and courageous. Now's the time to honor that pledge that we give every day that ends in justice for all. If we don't stand up for justice today, we will be on the same path where people are not heard, where their interests are not represented in their government, and where people will rise up and fight back. I will not give up on our trust in a pure American democracy because the Constitution is worth fighting for. The promises it provides are worth fighting for. The communities that we represent are worth fighting for. Para todos los que están escuchando en español, les digo una honra que hay aquí en esta Cámara de Representantes es que empezamos todos los días con una oración. Y hoy el pastor dijo, hay que dar gracias por América. Hay que dar gracias por la América donde la gente, donde el pueblo es libre, donde la gente puede vivir. Y ese mensaje fue para todos nosotros, todos los diputados, que América debe de ser un lugar donde la gente, donde el pueblo escoge sus representantes, no una elección donde ya sabemos quién va a ganar. Los Estados Unidos no se puede convertir a un país como el que dejamos porque venimos aquí por refugio, porque las promesas de la Constitución americana son diferentes de nuestros propios países. Aquí vivimos donde uno que es elegido tiene una responsabilidad al pueblo, no al revés. Y por eso le pido a todo el pueblo que ponga atención, que cuando ellos dicen que sus valores de ellos son más unidos a los de nosotros, Esto y este rediseño de estas mapas es como nos quitan de la mesa que ya estamos. Nos quitan nuestras voces donde ya tenemos puesto, donde ustedes ya han votado por sus representantes, y con esta actuación de esta Cámara de Representantes nos dejan en silencio. Nos quieren ver, no nos quieren escuchar, y ustedes son que va a hacer la diferencia y van a luchar para la democracia que merecemos. Por eso, miembros, les espero y les pido que voten no.
Thompson, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion that all of the speeches that have been given would be reduced to writing and placed in a journal.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? Chair is none so ordered. Chair has Mr. Wu.
I'm very tired. It's been a very long session. I'm in the same clothes that I wore starting on Sunday night until now. I've been sleeping on the House floor with Ms. Collier for the last few days. I'm very tired. But I'm here to fight, and I'm here, and what keeps me going, what gives me strength, why we do this is not about Democrats. It's not about Republicans. It's not even about Texas. It's about you. We fight so hard because at the end of the day, this is about you and this is about us. Because America is about us. America was a place that God built to give the people a place of their own. A place that the people could decide what was good for them and what they needed. That's what this is really about. For everyone who's watching and you don't understand what everything's about, this is about you. Because over and over again, we have heard from people who have said, this is not working out for us. This American dream that we were told about is no longer functioning. Everything we've been told and told that we should believe in, and this is what this country's about, no longer applies. Growing up, I was taught that this was the place, the one place in the world where you could be anybody. You didn't have to have the right last name. You didn't have to have famous parents. All you needed to do was work hard, follow the rules, and you'll earn the American dream. And time again, we have seen Americans out there struggling and failing, and again and again and again. Because the American dream no longer works for them. And it starts right here. This is why it doesn't work. This thing that we're doing, this body that we're in, this podium that I'm in front of, your problems start right here. And it is this issue that is the linchpin. You may not understand gerrymandering, you may not understand redistricting, but I hope you understand lying, cheating, and stealing. Because this is what people do. People like Donald Trump. People like the Republican Party of Texas. When they can't win, they cheat. The problem is, that doesn't stop in this room. That doesn't stop at just politics. You end up with elected officials who no longer care what you have to say, no matter where you live and what community you represent, whether you're black or Latino or white or Asian, it doesn't matter. They say nice things to your face. They say they care about you. And they take care of themselves. And they take care of their buddies. And they take care of their donors. And they take care of their king. Today, we had an opportunity to do something that the people actually wanted. Democrats and Republicans say, we should release the Epstein files. One of the greatest scandals in American history, one of the single largest incidents of human trafficking. Such a shameful act that our own government has helped to cover up because the people implicated are the wealthy and the powerful. People in Congress, people out of Congress, but people who control this nation and decide the rules for us. We had a chance to put on an amendment that would simply say, if you're going to do this dirty thing in the darkness, if you're going to do this despicable act quietly while you hope no one is watching, we should at least have some sunlight. We should at least have an ounce of sunlight to replace the ton of darkness that this puts upon us. And all it would have said was, if Donald Trump really wants this so badly, then condition it on his release of the Epstein files. I know people are laughing. Mr. Vassoud, Mr. Kane, when they went up to argue their point of order, were giggling about it. Repeatedly saying, oh, make sure you put in there that Epstein didn't kill himself. Because they know that Americans across the board care about this, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or nothing at all. They want transparency, they want accountability, and they want justice. I remember when Republicans used to say, release the Epstein files. And we would talk about how damning it was and how important it was. And all of a sudden, they really, really don't want to vote on it. So much so that they're willing to concoct a point of order for us to twist and bend our rules to get us struck down. That's fine. The people know. You had an opportunity to do what you promised, to do what you told people you would do, and you chose not to. You went to great lengths to not to. The United States Congress, with a 2-seat Republican majority, intentionally, purposely left early so they could be out until September so they wouldn't have to vote to release it. And you complain about us being gone for a couple of weeks. Congress is gone until September so they don't have to release the Epstein files. At the end of the day, this is about whether or not we will have a government that actually listens to us and actually does what we say, because every time people come out and say, we want education, and they say, well, here's some books we're going to ban. Every time we say, where is our health care? Why are people going bankrupt because somebody broke their leg? And they say, well, we're going to beat up on trans kids for you. Every time people ask, what happened to all the good jobs that we used to have? And they'll blame abortion or divorce, or I don't know what else. Because whatever they want to do is they don't want to answer to the people. They don't want to answer why aren't they doing what they said that they would do. The answer is right here at this podium on this issue. Because when you redistrict in a way that you can make it so you don't care who the voters are anymore, then you won't care who the voters are anymore. My fellow Americans, if you want to take your country back, if you want to go back to a nation that education actually provided a pathway to success, where hard work and following the rules actually meant something, where just because you were rich and powerful does not mean you get to evade justice, then start fighting. Start here. Texas will have to go to the courts. But California, New York, Illinois, Michigan, and many other states, look at what's happening here. Look carefully. This is the future, right here, if you do not act now. What Texas looks like, this process, this division, this partisanship, and most importantly, leaders who simply do not give a damn what you need or want anymore. If you do not stand up today and push back, the American dream will be dead, and our democracy will fall.
Mr. Hunter to close.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Rose, for what purpose?
does the gentleman yield for a few questions?
Gentleman
Not
yield
at
for
this
questions?
time.
Not at this time.
Okay. At any time?
If you've walked back, maybe.
If I what?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I am going to address the body. I'm not calling people out by their names. We passed House rules that provided decorum, not shots at individual members in their names. Seems to be a little bit of a contradiction that we're all supposed to be respectable, but yet the opposition throws out our names. So let me make a few comments. Why are we here? Because congressional redistricting is allowed. Why are we here? One reason is the U.S. Supreme Court said the following. It says, we recognize that politics and political considerations are inseparable from districting and apportionment. To hold that legislators cannot take partisan interests into account when drawing district lines would essentially countermand the framers' decision to entrust districting to political entities. The law allows it. Now, we have just heard a couple of hours from our Democrat opposition, and everyone that spoke was with the Democrat Party. I'm standing with Republican members. And what's wrong with Republicans standing up, and Republicans stepping up, and Republicans being honest, which you don't like, which is Supreme Court says we can use political and partisanship to do congressional redistricting. We will not agree on this issue. We will push forward as the votes have been all day long. The votes today have followed the Supreme Court, which is partisanship, preferential. And yes, we have a congressional plan. What's the difference to the whole world listening? Republicans support it, Democrats do not. And that's the bottom line. I've heard a lot of comments, and I will tell you, I don't take them personally. That's how and the reason I dress this way. These are tough issues. I feel like sometimes that I'm a piñata with no candy, just hit. But I respect all of you. We may not agree, and we won't agree on this issue. Absolutely not. But I do want to say this to my opposition, and you will not like this. I was told by a very long-time Democrat, South Texan, who said, "Todd, I want you to know I'm not a walker, I'm a stalker." And I will tell you, I don't like walkouts. And you can tell me every reason in the world you did. But you left from 17 to 19 days. And most of the comments I've heard could have been handled, discussed, or mutually involved this House within that time period. You chose to leave, or some of you did. That's your choice. We chose to stay. That was our choice. So, members, I want everybody to know this is the plan. It has been supported. It has council approval, and it absolutely should pass. And I want to thank the Republican members for standing with me. This may be one of the very few times, Dean Craddock, that we've had all of us up here together. And even though he's a good opponent, Chris Turner has now placed me into the old club with you over this particular bill. I'm glad to take questions.
Mr. Speaker? Calling for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Gentleman yield for questions?
You know,
he yields for
yes,
I yields for questions.
Okay, I didn't hear a correct answer. Chairman, are you aware that during slavery, blacks fled? Are you aware that during the slavery times, blacks fled? They ran away.
I can't hear you very well.
Are you aware that when there was slavery times, blacks fled? During the Nazi times, Jewish people fled. They fled their oppressor.
Mr. Speaker, I noticed that Republicans don't get help.
The chair advises the guests that the rules of the House strictly prohibit demonstrations or outbursts by visitors in the gallery. If there are additional demonstrations or outbursts in the gallery, the chair will order the sergeant at arms to clear the gallery under the House's constitutional authority to prevent obstruction of its proceedings.
Chairman.
Yes.
This is a very powerful visual that you have up here that you just spoke about.
And very good, because you all just did it. It's time the Republicans get to do it.
Absolutely. You do it all the time. You all do it all the time. But let me just ask you some questions, because I think that this is an important visual for Texans, the voters of Texas, because our crowd of gang looks smaller than yours. And so I thank you for showing that visual,
because it
doesn't look as diverse.
Correct. It's 88 to 62.
Yeah, but your crowd does not reflect the diversity of Texas.
Now let's I think we're
What is your
avoiding the
understanding
bill
of the
right
requirements?
now.
What is your understanding?
Sorry, Denise.
What is your
Katrina?
understanding of the requirements of Section 2
Hey, Nicole.
of the Voting Rights Act?
Could not hear. Would you repeat?
Yes, sir. What is your understanding of the requirements of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act?
I don't have all the elements here, but the Voting Rights Act needs to be followed. Section 2 is one of the biggest sections in there. As I've told you, just like, I hate to tell all of you, but there's a lot of photos of the scripts that were on your phones from organizations with lawyers out in the hallway. But we go to council, we present bills, and if they have approved them and tell us that we have followed these legal positions, we do, and that has been done.
I'm sorry, I don't think that you answered the question.
I sure did.
What is your understanding?
I just told you that. Again, I'll repeat again. I do not have all of the elements on the Voting Rights Act in
Well, what
Section
elements do
2.
you have?
No.
What
I
elements
get
do you have?
Mr. Speaker, can I ever get a chance to finish my answers? I thought we had ruled that a question and I get to answer.
Members, make sure that you allow each other to finish the question and answer so the members in the gallery can hear the debate.
Thank you. Repeating, do I have all of the Voting Rights Act criteria in front of me? No. Do the lawyers that I've worked with? Yes. Can I go make a call and get it to folks? Yes. You can do the same thing. Section 2 in the Voting Rights Act is what has been looked at in redistricting. Petaway has changed the law. Rucho has changed the law. Many of you, Representative, are talking about 2021. I do get a kind of an interesting deal, everybody. You complain about 2025 and tell me 2021 is okay, but you sued me on 2021. I don't know which way to go. But my point is, do I have them right here? No. But do I feel, you just asked me, do I have the elements? I told you.
I'm asking what you understand it to mean.
I told you, I understand. You want me, let me go back to the beginning of the speech that I gave that.
No, I just want to know.
Well, no, you asked. I read it to you at the very beginning. This was done when we started today.
Okay.
Another important law that we must follow is a federal law known as the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Okay. Although race cannot be the predominant factor in drawing maps, Section 2 of that act prohibits enactment of any plan that restricts minority citizens from having an opportunity to elect their preferred candidate of choice in certain circumstances if they exist. That was my knowledge, and I placed it out at the very beginning of the debate.
And so that's your understanding?
That's my general understanding.
Well, thank you.
There's a lot more.
Thank you for.
And you can go into the various cases, but
did you perform?
Rucha, too, involves the voting rights along with Petaway.
Did you perform any racially polarized voting analysis in drawing these maps?
Okay. I have been asked that question. I will answer it again. Did Todd Hunter personally? No. Did Todd Hunter go to a law firm that performed all review? The answer is yes.
And what is that law firm?
Their name is Butler Snow, which was stated on the microphone a few hours ago.
Okay, and they performed the racially polarized voting analysis in drawing the maps?
I went to the law firm, told them what the goal was, they prepared. If anybody has the specifics, they have it.
But did they perform any racially polarized voting analysis in drawing the maps?
Second time, I told you I have no personal knowledge, but I'm sure the law firm performed everything they needed to do.
What did they need to do?
Well, I hope I'm not the one having to tell law firms what to do, but if they know anything about redistricting, they know about Petaway, they know about Rucho, They know about the Voting Rights Act. They also know about the other Fifth Circuit as well as U.S. Supreme Court. My view is you would go through all of those areas and you rely on the firms, just like your groups are. Some of the ones that you said you represented, I know who your lawyers are. And you go to them, they perform analysis, and they gave you the scripts on your phone today. All I did was go to a law firm, and they orally gave me my information. And then I prepared it out. Did I personally go to everything? No. That's why I rely on professionals who can give me that detail.
You make assumptions, and you know what they say when people make an assumption.
Well, I mean, an assumption could mean anything. So
I know,
don't
but
know
you
what you're talking
assumed that
about.
I went with some lawyer.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You made an assumption about what I did with a
No,
lawyer.
I did not make it about you.
Did you perform any electoral performance analysis in drawing the majority-minority districts in this map?
Same answer that I've just given you, same answer that I have given everybody. We went to a law firm who had the expertise. They prepared everything that I was told they needed to do.
Is that a no?
I told you personally I did not.
Thank
and
you.
I went to a law firm who performed it and gave me the information.
Besides the law firm, did anyone else involved in the creation of this body, of this map, perform that type of analysis?
That I don't know.
The evidence at trial at the League of United Latin American Citizens versus Abbott case, the one that's in El Paso, was that the Attorney General's office has a system to perform racially polarized voting analysis. Was that used at any point on your map before today?
Personal knowledge, I don't know.
And you said that Butler Snow was the...
Butler Snow is the law firm.
And you don't know if they did that type of analysis?
I don't know what they did, but I'm sure they did everything they needed to do.
All right. And this Butler Snow law firm, are they your personal lawyer?
Okay. As I explained earlier in the day, Butler Snow is a law firm that helped in 2021. Because you all sued us in 2021, they continue their representation of me. With congressional redistricting, they were engaged again, and then I was listed because I was already in an attorney relationship with them. So it continues from 2021 to today, but the answer is yes, they represent me.
And do you pay for them with your
No.
own campaign money, or do
No,
you pay for
I
them
don't
with
pay
personal
them.
money?
I don't pay them.
Who pays for them?
I don't know who specifically pays them, but there's a contract that pays the attorney relationship with me and others.
So
That's already been brought up in the committee hearings.
Oh, I'm just asking.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're asking, I noticed the people that know this aren't at the back mic.
Well, there may be a lot of people who don't know a lot of things.
Well, that's why we're
So
answering your
the
questions.
2021
I just want to know who you're getting all your feedback up there on your notes. But
Well,
I'm
I
not
wrote
going to
them.
ask you who.
I wrote them myself.
And I won't ask some of the members who took photos of your scripts to disclose that too.
Okay.
And just remember,
Is it your belief?
Representative, in
Is it your belief?
2021,
Sure.
I was the chairman of redistricting. There sure are a lot of you in the back that came and asked me to help you.
Well, that's how
And
you
now
made it.
today,
Wait. That's how you had
now
it.
today, I'm getting an attack. So I guess it was okay for you to ask for my help in 2021, and then today attack us.
Well, when we're not included in the process and you
You
control
left
the
for
whole
17 to 19 days. How could you be included?
Again, when
Again, that's correct. Again, in 2021, you did also.
When you oppress, when you are oppressed, you try to flee the oppressor.
We
Is it your
disagree.
belief that you can be fairly
We disagree
confident?
with
Is it your belief that you can be fairly confident how a district will vote, Republican or Democrat, by the racial percentage
No.
of the citizen
I
voting
don't-
age population
No, I do not
in that
think
district?
No, you didn't. I get to finish.
Oh, I had to finish
you
my
asked
question.
a question. No, you didn't. You asked me. Nobody knows who's going to win an election. That's why I disagree with most of your all arguments. That doesn't mean a Republican or a Democrat are going to win. You have new criteria that may give people some energy to run and maybe some areas they can do better in, but it doesn't say who's going to win. None of us can predict who's going to win an election.
Then why are you changing the maps now?
Well, one of the reasons is for partisan reasons under Rucho, and to give Republicans an opportunity where they haven't in the past.
The composition of CD 30 under the proposed plan creates a black majority citizen voting age population district in Dallas County. Is that correct?
Congressional 30, to respond to you, the political performance is unchanged. There was no black CVAP in 2021. Now it is a black CVAP in 2025. So everybody has the information. The black CVAP in 30 is 50.41%. The political performance is still Democrat.
Did you or the map drawer perform any analysis to determine if, under the currently enacted plan, black voters could elect their preferred candidates in the current CD 30 as it is composed?
If they did, I have no personal knowledge.
But did you?
I've told you before, Todd Hunter has no personal knowledge. The law firm would have committed and practiced the analysis.
Did you or the map drawer perform any analysis to determine if, under the currently enacted plan, black voters could elect their preferred candidates in the current Congressional District 33?
Are you talking about 2021? Because you said currently enacted.
Well, my questions have been about current.
The gentleman's time has
Mr.
expired.
Speaker,
Expired for what purpose?
I move to extend the time for.
The motion to extension of time, this will be the first extension of time. There is objection. Record vote. Clerk, please ring the bell.
No, let's say no. No.
Ben.
Just like 3 more. They just can't.
I got 2 questions I want to ask him.
Okay. Yeah.
Have all members voted? 54 ayes, 83 nays.
I
The
see they're
motion for
scared.
extension of time fails.
Move passage.
The question occurs on passage to engrossment of House Bill 4. This is a record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. Serves 100 voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? 88 ayes, 52 nays. House Bill 4 passes to engrossment. Members, it is the intent of the chair to adjourn briefly to begin a new legislative day. The call remains in place and the doors remain locked. Mr. Guerin moves to the House adjourn until until 5:25 today. Is there objection? Record vote has been recorded. There is objection. This will be a record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. Have all members voted? There being 87 ayes and 52 nays, the motion prevails. And the House stands adjourned until 5:25. The House will come to order. Members, please register. Have all members registered? Have all members registered? Being 138 ayes and 0 nay, or 138 present, a quorum is present. The following announcement, the clerk will read the announcements.
The Select Committee on Disaster Preparedness and Flooding will meet today upon final recess or during bill referral period if permission is granted in room 1W.14 Agricultural Museum in a formal meeting to consider pending referred and committee business.
Mr. Rosenthal, for what purpose?
I'll wait for the HB4 author.
Mr. Hunter, Mr. Dutton, for what purpose?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Has the bill passed now?
On second reading.
Yes. Does that mean it's passed?
On second reading. It is not finally passed.
So, parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Dutton, state your inquiry.
So, does the notice on call say final passage of the bill?
Mr. Dutton, the call on the House, the motion made by the body was for final passage.
And the note says final passage.
I'm sorry?
I'm looking at the note. I didn't see final passage on the note that people were given, the notice that people were given.
Mr. Dutton, I cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry, Mr. Dutton.
One of the notices I saw about being on the call didn't say final passage.
The call was made, the motion by the body was until it's finally completed on third reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Mr. Hunter for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move to direct the chief clerk when engrossing HB4 to incorporate into Article 2 of the bill the text of the census geography for each district that describes the plan as finally passed by the House.
Members, you've heard the motion. There is a record vote request on all votes today. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Hunter voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? 89 ayes, 49 nays. The motion prevails. Chair lays out on third reading House Bill 4. The clerk will read the bill.
HB number 4 by Hunter relating to the composition of the districts for the election of members of the United States House of Representatives from the state of Texas.
Mr. Hunter to explain the bill.
Thank you. Members, again, we are now on third reading of HB4, and I'll take questions.
Ms. Rose, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, would a gentleman yield?
Gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
Thank
Yields
you.
for questions.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Chairman Hunter, I just want to talk to you a little bit about coalition districts. Which districts in the 2021 map were coalition districts?
I can't recall.
What do you understand coalition districts are?
Well, if you'll go to Petaway, which we discussed on second reading about coalition districts, it will give you coalition districts as well as crossover districts. Coalition districts, as you're aware, are when, let's say, two minority groups are able to combine together. And what this says is you can have a coalition district, but you cannot use it to violate Section 2.
So, so it's your view that coalition districts are illegal? Illegal?
Well, I don't know if I can say they're legal. They are a term that was used prior to 2024. With the Petaway decision, I'm not sure exactly how they'd be legally categorized, but the terminology is still used.
Okay. So which coalition districts did you dismantle in the map that you're passing?
Well, I didn't go at coalition districts. I had the lawyers come up with 5 seats and enhance the Republican performance. And that's what we did. I didn't go at a coalition. I was looking at voter, basically citizen voting and voter age population.
So while you were doing that, did it leave any coalition districts in the maps from 2021?
That I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Rosenthal, for what purpose?
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
He yields for questions.
Thank you, Chair Hunter. Why was no public testimony allowed for this committee substitute plan C2333?
I don't know because I'm not the chairman or vice chairman.
Can you explain how the public input that was collected at the field hearings is reflected in this map that we have today?
There was testimony on Austin to San Antonio, and there was discussion about how long it went in, why there wasn't more in one area or not. That's one of the areas that we've heard. We also heard at the several public hearings, and so that everybody knows there's a difference between compact and packed and cracked. And in those hearings, there was a lot of discussion of folks talking about it's better to be compact in the districts. Those variables were included, and I gave that information to the lawyers from the hearing.
Can you explain why a map proposal was not made available to the public at the field hearings, the 3 field hearings that we had?
No, I don't.
It was made clear by both the House and Senate chairs that the map proposal was drawn by outside consultants through the Butler Snow law firm. Why wasn't the map available for the public to view and comment on at that time?
So I didn't hear could you read the first part of your question?
Sure. It was made clear by yourself numerous times today and in committee that the map proposal was drawn by outside consultants through the Butler Snow law firm. Why wasn't that map available for the public to view for those field hearings?
First, just to clarify how you said that, Butler Snow, as we've talked about today, is the law firm.
Yes.
Whether the individual lawyers, they had consultants, I do not know that. Why it wasn't produced until after the Arlington hearing, is that what you're asking?
I'm asking why it was not produced until after all of the public hearings.
It wasn't Arlington the last public hearing?
Austin, Houston, Arlington, yes.
Yeah. That I don't know. I was not asked to be the author of the bill until Tuesday after the Arlington hearing.
I see, thank you. Why was public testimony limited to only 5 hours in each of the field hearings?
I do not know because I'm not the head of that committee.
Okay, so at the limit of possibility, which of course we can't operate at that, if you have 5 hours, a maximum of 150 people could speak if we were going in perfect order with no breaks, right? If each one had 2 minutes.
Well, you know, I'll rely on your math, but they also had a portal. They could also bring in written testimony. I believe the chairman set up a system where people could provide written information. In fact, many of us got written information, so it wasn't just limited to oral testimony. Plus, you did have, I think Zoom was set up at one of them, but you had participating, and you could then turn in writing.
But you would agree the math says if you had 5 hours for public testimony, for people to actually speak, the maximum number would have been 150 in each hearing.
I said I'm relying on your math as
Very
an
good.
engineer.
And so for the last hearing where we actually had a map to look at, 10 hours, that would have been a max of 300 people if you accept the math.
I will rely on you as a House member if you've done the math.
Do you know how many witnesses registered for the bill's companion in Houston?
At the Houston hearing?
Sorry, in the House hearing. So when we had the bill in front of us in the House, do you know how many people registered?
I do not.
It was around 500. Do you know how many people registered against the filed map?
I don't.
It was 473. Do you know how many were in favor?
I don't.
3. It seems that the vast majority of Texans are not in favor of this redistricting. Can you remind us of why we're here if it's not to serve the people of Texas?
Well, I disagree with you. We had hearings. You didn't mention what was brought up earlier today. I believe your party had field officers, at least in print, and robos going out getting people to the hearing. Now that sounds like people are driving people to the hearing to oppose. That was in print. 2, even if they did, I think it is constructive to have hearings to hear folks. I also think it's constructive when members are present to meet with us. And I also think it's constructive that the more we're together as a body, like you just said, we can get things done very, very well. So I believe that we did have the current and good operation. And I don't know why the numbers were the way they were, but I'm not surprised. I've been to many hearings where the opposition comes out, not necessarily the support. Lots of that. That's nothing unusual to me.
A few proponents of this map have cited population increase as a reason to redistrict. Can you remind us of what data was used to redraw this map? Was it anything to do with population increase?
Could you, it echoes, could you repeat that question one more time?
Could you tell us if population increase or population numerical data was used to draw the map in terms of the change in the number of population?
As I stated when we were voting on the bill earlier, all the data, all the information that was in the creation of the details were done by council or whoever they involved. Todd Hunter does not have personal knowledge of that, but relied on council.
So, had nothing to do with any new official census data, right?
That I don't know. I don't know if there's estimated census out there. I know there's a lot of trend data out there. I personally do not know the specific data.
Got it. Do you think it's fair to voters to have their congressional districts constantly changed?
Well, I'm not sure. Well, first of all, there's nothing that prevents redistricting to be continuing.
That's true. So in the theoretical limit,
But I hadn't finished.
you could redraw the districts in front of every single election if we go down this path. Is that true? Theoretically.
Theoretically, I doubt it because I don't think practically you could. But I do believe there is nothing that bars redistricting to be taken up at different times. We're not held to a 10-year standard. That's incorrect. And just because you don't like it doesn't mean you're not able to do it.
So I'll point out, do you realize that This whole process has taken you all less than 30 days. And so you can admit to the possibility that this could be done in front of every single election if you think there's a possibility you'll lose.
You know, what happens, happens, my
Thank you,
Vice
sir.
Chairman. I just don't know.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Bernal, for what purpose?
Does the gentleman yield for a few questions?
Gentleman yield for
Yes.
questions? He yields for questions.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to try to go through these quickly for time. I want to talk about CD 35. What is the specific purpose of creating CD 35 with a Hispanic citizen voting age population of 51.6%?
So your question is, why was it created?
Right, with that, what I'll call a razor-thin margin. What is the purpose?
I don't know what the purpose is on the margin, but this was under the Supreme Court, one of the districts that could be Republican, and so they used partisanship in it.
Do you know if CD 35, with a Hispanic citizen voting age population of 51.6%, was created to comply with the Voting Rights Act?
All right, you're talking about 35?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So everybody knows Hispanic CVAP in 2021 was 4586. In this bill, it is 5157. So we increased it 5.71 change. And I don't know if that was the council's goal, but I'm sure they used all this information to create it.
So to that point, just need to ask, do you know the purpose of the geographic changes to CD 35? It was moved out of Travis and I-35, out of Kyle and Buda.
So this is one of the ones where the vice chairman just asked. We heard testimony in the hearings about Austin to San Antonio. And this is one of the ones that was suggested we may want to take a look at this area because it goes all the way down. And so I am sure that was one of the factors that was taken into 35, and it's now a new Hispanic CVAP majority district. And Republican does performance increase, absolutely.
Do you know whether or not, when approaching, let's call it the current or previous version prior to this map, the previous version of CD 35, when I say previous, I mean the one that is now, before these maps might be implemented, certainly hope not. But do you know if